good winning chances. So we took a glimpse at the move bishop d7, and after queen takes e4, very good position for white. And really the only way black can try to stop white from taking the pawn is this move bishop to b4 check. Now after bishop d2, again, the trade favors white because c4 pawn is going to be lost. And again, this is one of those positions, for example, after castle, queen takes c4, which is very typical of Catalan. Not only do you have better pieces, for example, the bishop on g2 is much better than his countercard on c8, but you have firm control of the center, the pawn is on d4, firm control of the c5 and e5 squares, potentially, and the half-open c-file, and very easy development for your pieces. So you can castle, play rook f2 c1 followed by b4 b5 plan, and besides that you always have the chance to play in the center after the move e4 followed by d5 or even e5. Whereas black really suffers because his whole problem is the c8 bishop, and of course a little bit space disadvantage because of the white powerful pawn on d4. So that's why black should not take on d2. Instead, his best try is this knight to d5 move. And now bishop takes b4, knight d takes b4, and again, if there are no tactics and white gets the pawn back from c4, white just stands better. But the whole point behind black's idea now is that it's not so easy for white to get back the pawn. Because if white plays natural looking move a3, that instead of the passive knight back to d5, black has some great idea up to his sleeve. And this is the move, b7 to b5. Notice that if queen takes b5, now knight c2, and this leads to some problems because now white is going to lose the pawn, the rook on a1. Of course, after queen takes knight on c6, black will simply defend with the bishop to d7, but in the meantime, the knight from a1 is not going to be easily captured. So going into this mess is not recommended for white. And instead, white has a very strong and simple move, knight to c3. This is actually a very strong improvement over the more common played castle. And move knight to c3 was used just recently at the Super Grandmaster tournament in Chorus, week on Z, by none other than one of the experts in the Catalan, Aronian, against a very strong grandmaster, super grandmaster, Mickey Adams. So of course the main idea of knight c3 is to prevent this idea at b5. And of course Adams tries to play a6 with the idea to still have b5 option handy, but here Aronian simplifies into a very good position after knight e5, castles, knight takes c6, knight takes c6, and now it's okay to give up your powerful bishop because you're gonna ruin black's pawn structure. Bishop takes c6, pawn takes c6, and now queen takes c4. And simply taking a quick glance at this position shows you that black has some serious problems. He has chronic weaknesses, c6 and c7. Pawn on a6 is also weak. But the main problem is he's always going to have this problem with the bishop on c8. And Aronian was able to convert his advantage quite nicely. And what I like about these positions is that white always has the slight advantage, and whether you convert it to win or not, it's up to the technique you have. But really, in terms of solving opening problems, Catalan actually does very good for white. So this concludes the knight c6 variation, and altogether concludes the d takes c line.
So we covered most of the Catalan already. So what's left is bishop b4 check, bishop d2, bishop e7, or bishop e7 right away with idea of c6 and b6 never taking on c4. So this is going to be kind of closed system. And also the bishop e7 followed by castle in and dc. I want to mention that we are not going to cover here c5 move, since it transposes after c takes d, e takes d to Tarrasch defense, which is completely separate chapter. Well, it's completely separate opening, and we are not going to cover this. So let's go on with bishop b4 check, bishop d2, most common and best move. We don't want to give too many options for white because we are playing white, so we should cover everything black might do, but we're going to play bishop d2, bishop e7, and here is Eugene back with the coverage from this position.
Hi everyone, Eugene's here. So as Roman mentioned, we have left the closed Catalan now to cover, and also we're going to cover the main lines with immediate bishop e7, castle, and d takes c. But first, let us take a look at this position where black gives the check to b4, bishop b4 check, and then plays bishop to e7. And before we go further, I want to really take a look and try to understand why black gives the check first instead of immediate bishop e7, castle, c6, b6, and so forth, followed by the closed Catalan setup. So the main idea why bishop b4 check is played is to force white to put either the bishop on d2 or one of the knights on d2. Typically bishop goes to d2, and then after bishop e7, black sort of stopped white from the best queenside development for his pieces. Because if we go back and take a look at bishop e7, for example, bishop g2, castle, castle c6, here white has very good plan to play b3, for example, knight bd7, bishop b2, followed by knight to c3, or even queen c2, knight c3, or even knight bd2. So notice how easy it is for white to develop his queenside pieces, and having the bishop on d2 really makes it a little bit harder for white to develop his pieces. So that's why black played the bishop b4 check first.